Those June bugs are awful. They're just awful.
And of course in Fiddler we had coats and hats and gloves, and it was hot.
Like, I'm sure there's still like dead bug smears in my book of all my cues.
Worked out well for me because it was actually the summer after my freshman year at college, so lost the freshman 15 all in one go.
You kind of embrace it, and if you don't embrace it, you don't do a show at Sumter.
A lot of what I remember from being part of shows is just dripping sweat backstage.
And the heat is just, you know it going in. There's no pretenses that it's going to be cold or it's going to rain. You just understand that, and it becomes part of the fun, honestly. You kind of embrace it, and if you don't embrace it, you don't do a show at Sumter. There's just no other way, and I mean, you cross your fingers that it'll be cool that night, but by the end of the night you have so much fun and everyone's drenched in sweat and it doesn't really matter. So it's still fun doing a show, and it's always fun doing it in the evening and getting hit by bugs in the face and everything else. It just becomes part of being at Sumter.
42nd Street, we had June bugs fly in our mouth in the middle of a song. It was lovely.
Always the June bugs. The June bugs are I remember just watching those June bugs hit those, like, the oboe player in the head, and those. Jill Plum was our accompanist for many years, and she's amazing, but those June bugs would just land on her pages, and she would just be playing, and she would just flick that June bug.
It was just about as hot that summer as Nebraska can give you. It was really spectacularly hot.
I don't think anyone should ever wear wool in an outdoor theater in July.
Somebody had told us that was the hottest summer so far on record for the theater. So it was nasty, I'm not gonna lie. It was very nasty, it was gross backstage, but everybody is such good sports about it because they're in it to do it and have that experience, and you joke about it and you laugh about it and you stand there, blowing out your armpits and putting ice packs, around you so you can cool off a little tiny bit off stage. And it just all adds to it, and you think about it later on and you don't remember how hot it was. But that experience is something you can't recreate anywhere else.
My most memorable moment was in Into the Woods. There's this scene where these 4 survivors are all kind of fighting amongst each other, and the baker's just figured out that his wife is dead, and he's like, I just can't do it anymore, and he gives us the baby and says, go take care of my baby, and I'm like, you dum-dum. And then we run off stage and we're all really mad, and I remember just like taking in this gasp of air because to show that I was really angry, and then a June bug also came into my mouth with that gasp of air. So I got off stage and Jackson, our Jack, was like, are you okay? And I'm just like choking on a bug. It was truly disgusting. Unpleasant, just Sweat City, and especially in a ball gown. And the lovely people at Ibsen Costumes said, we're renting this out right after you're done, so don't sweat too much, haha. And I said, I'm sorry. It was a brutal summer. This particular summer was awful. Like, we won the award. Nobody can argue with me. That is the award for the hottest summer ever. The end. Yeah.
There's a lot of sweat. Anyone who has ever done a show at PLVCT will probably talk about the sweat, especially if there's any winter scenes, any wool coats, guys and dolls. That was a rough one. The nun costumes in Sound of Music were also a little warm. And then, of course, the bugs also, which usually come out around Act 2 through the end. If you're singing Climb Every Mountain and you have those nice tall vowels, they will find you. But it's all worth it in the end because it's just so much fun, and I've had nothing but positive experiences here, and that's why I keep coming back. Yeah, I think, during Guys and Dolls, Jay had a midline bug fly into his mouth and he kind of choked on it a little bit, and it was hilarious. But I didn't laugh, but I was just like, oh yeah, you just keep rolling with it. But things that you don't normally experience at other venues. Yeah, well, and with Hairspray, we had all of these really tall wigs for the finale, and they would just, I don't know if it was the hairspray or the hair itself, but they loved it. And so half the time after bows, everyone would be like, oh, you have bugs, and you're like, oh, I know, I can feel them. I know.
So I have been fortunate enough to be on the PLVCT stage 2 years in a row. The first year was Guys and Dolls, and in a very bright green polyester suit that I proceeded to sweat through every evening. So I believe one Sunday evening, the Sunday evening performance, it was at 102 at Curtin. I think it was 102 degrees that evening. I could be wrong, but it was hot. By the time Sit Down, You're Rockin' the Boat came around, I was completely drenched and soaking through. But no real bug issues for me.
No, me neither. I've done 2 shows at PLVCT, and the first was Music Man. That was hot, just because of the three-piece wool suit tap dancing. For me, Hairspray was a camp shirt and a pair of pants, so I had a great costume. I think it depends on your costume experience. I've never valued a little window AC so much in my life. How important it is to keep the door closed when that thing is trying to cool us off. And again, no bug issues for me. Or maybe I blocked them out. That could be too.
During this one scene in Mother Appis's office, it was that perfect moment where the sun was hitting us just right, where we could not even see each other. It was just this red, glaring sun in our faces. And we just had to giggle at each other every night because we knew we were having to go through the whole scene completely blinded by the sun. But those are the challenges that you can laugh about, and you can have that sense of camaraderie with each other. Yeah, there's the June bugs flying in your face and everything flying in your mouth at any given time. We got a lot of protein, probably extra protein that we didn't think we were going to have that day in our diet of things being swallowed. Yeah, so it happens, plus the heat.
Josh Pryor, who was the Tin Man, he was wearing this suit. It came to the point in the show where Dorothy was going to go back to Kansas, and she was giving them all hugs. So I got to the Tin Man, and he puts his arms down, and just sweat comes pouring like a waterfall out of his jacket. So I'm smiling at him, and he's like, and I just kind of pulled his face in and gave him a little kiss on the cheek. I was like, don't touch me.
And I actually had to have help getting dressed because it's a quick change. So I had to get my makeup put on for me as I was sitting there trying not to sweat already. The first costume we had was not ideal for looking like the Tin Man. It was more like looking like the Michelin Man. And so then the one I had to go out and find did not breathe. So at Sumter, middle of July, sweaty weather, and in fake leather that didn't breathe. So I basically had sweat coming down my arms, down my legs all the time, and everyone knew where I was on stage because there was drops of sweat on the stage as I would leave that area.
I remember it was really, really hot that summer, and we were all dressed up as cowboys, and we had the leather vests and the leather chaps. And I remember we got off stage from the very first scene, and our director, Molly Grasso, she just looks at all of us and she goes, I didn't think you could sweat through leather. And sure enough, we took off the vests, we took off the chaps, and the back of the leather vests were just drenched. It was so hot, but it was so fun. It worked out well for me because it was actually the summer after my freshman year at college, so lost the freshman 15 all in one go. So we realized that cowboy boots, they don't track very well on the concrete, and so I think it was either Molly Grasso or Jeff Nienhauser that said, well, there's an old trick is that you can mop the stage with soda pop and it'll give you a little more traction while you're dancing. So we did that. It worked out great until the sun went down, and then just a million June bugs descended onto the stage. And as we were walking around and doing everything, it sounded like we were tap dancing. It was disgusting for us. I don't know if the audience picked up on it, but it was an unforgettable moment.
It was just like amazingly hot that summer, and of course in Fiddler we had, you know, coats and hats and gloves, and it was hot, very hot. And the Japanese beetles were probably the worst they have ever been, even though they seem to be now. They seem to be worse, but they weren't that summer. They were everywhere. So it was many people had Japanese beetles. They're singing and in went a Japanese beetle. So, but I was hot. And that was before they had any. That was before the city was involved in the amphitheater, and we had to buy air conditioners for the dressing room because there were no air conditioners. The backstage areas were super hot, so they had to put we bought fans to put in there. It's like it was crazy.
It's outside, it's hot, people pass out, they get heat exhaustion, heat stroke, sunburns. Me. So that was the first thing I did. I learned how much water you actually had to drink. And I learned that sitting out in the sun in all black does not work for outdoor theater. The heat, I never think back as an audience member and think of, oh, the heat was awful as an audience member from the years I came and saw shows. But when you're a part of it and you're out there all day, and as the stage manager, I was the first one there. I was there as early as 4 p.m., which is right when the sun is like really getting you. Being out there for that many hours before the show is strenuous. Like, you're just like so tired by the end of the night, and you're also just so hot. I never really had a problem with bugs flying in my mouth. I did have a problem with bugs flying onto my script with the lights, my little band lights that I had. So that was interesting. Like, I'm sure there's still like dead bug smears in my book of all my cues.
Being kind of put to their limits almost in the heat.
The one thing that I think people don't quite understand when, as an audience member or cast member out there at the Sumter, they think, "Ooh, July, summer, heat." There is almost always a nice southerly breeze that comes through that amphitheater bowl. So it is not uncommon at the end of the show to look out from the stage and see people bundled up in blankets, in coats, because it actually does get a little chilly out there. So never fear, always come to the Sumter. It's a great place to see a show, and not as hot as you would think for July.